here we are, week 4. We are just cycling through this. You guys are just zipping along. Before you know it, there's going to be snow on the ground and finals being done. Let's not rush it though. I want to keep the sunshine. But just checking in, see how you guys are doing. Today we are going to talk a little bit about object recognition. Workbooks are loaded. You have an exam due this week. I think that some of you might have answered some of the questions in the last go using AI. So I'm going to please ask you to not do that. Use your own brain. I would like to hear your voice in it. These are not hard graded, so please, just a little bit of effort in it. If you did not use AI, then good job. You're doing awesome. Okay, so we are going to discuss object recognition, and it ties into perceptions that we talked about in the last class. So we touched on the idea of bottom-up or top-down processing in last week's chat in class. So bottom-up is where we are really just taking in all the things from our senses, right? There's very little brain involved except for the firing from our senses to our brain. Top-down is where we're taking information from our brain and then going through the different sensory inputs that we have. So when we talk about object recognition, this is really going to come into play. One of the first ideas to lay the foundation for this is something called the feature integration theory. And there are simple features or there's conjunctive features. So the idea is that it was first sort of studied by scientists that looked at popping up an image like this, not this, I'll put something over it, this, that has numbers and 4 different images, right? So what they did is they had that up for 1/5 of a second and then put something over it so that it didn't stay in your perception. So a big black dot to blur out any sort of image memories or ghost images that laid in your peripheral vision. And then they asked them to first name the numbers that were there, and then to go ahead and name the objects, describe them in the 4 different quadrants, right? So that seems pretty simple, but when tasked with it, they did the numbers correctly, but they were not able to correctly identify the different quadrants. So they would confuse a red triangle and say that it was black, right? So the idea here is that in this pre-attentive stage, before we are actually paying attention to it, that 1/5 of a second, they are just simply floating features that exist independently. That they are just shapes, colors, anything like that. So an example here, right? So we have red, we have curved, we have a tilted line. Things like that are just things that are put into our brain, and that's because this is all done bottom-up processing, right? The brain's not involved until way later. So on that initial reaction, it is bottom-up processing. You're purely taking in information, but these are floating information things, and they are not connected. So how can we change that? Well, in another example, what people would do, the researchers, before they would go in, they would say, I'm going to show you a carrot, a lake, and a tire. And then they would pop up this image. Boop. So, same situation. So they did it 2 ways. The first time, just this image, boop, without any sort of priming, right? And then they would say maybe a black triangle, right? Because these are just free-floating images in their brain. But once that priming is done, and we're led to believe a carrot, a lake, and a tire are going to be seen in this image, boop, back again. Now, what they do is they associate it together, so top-down processing is taken over. So another idea, so those are simple features, right? Things get a little bit more difficult when we come into conjunction images. So let's look at this first one. And I ask you to find the horizontal line, right? So this is all green. All you have to do is find one simple task, simple feature, the green horizontal line, right? Now things are going to be a little bit more difficult when I throw up this image and ask you to find the different color horizontal line. I think it's supposed to be, I don't have it up right now. I think it's black? Whatever it is, let's say black horizontal line. I can't remember. Anyway, when that pops up, so now there's two things that you have to find. One, you have to find something that is a different color, a specific color, and two, a specific layout design. So what requires for the simple is just identification, right? You do not need attention at all, right? Your brain just does it. When we have this conjunction in it, now you need both attention and processing speeds. So this is going to make things a little bit more difficult. So now I want you to go onto Blackboard under in-class supplements, and I want you to take some time. We'll hit pause and do the visual search. Okay? When you get done with it, look at your results, and then right underneath it, I have some of my results. So you can compare the two. So go do that. Again, it's in the Cog Labs, which is going to take more time, so I apologize for that. But go ahead, hit pause, boop, and then come back. I'll wait. All right, we're back. How'd it go? Did your graph compare to what mine did? You know, I think it's important to think about the reasons behind this and the visual search. So next, we are going to talk about recognizing things based on familiar stimulus. So when we see something that is recognizable, we're more likely to identify it, right? That's obvious. You're able to identify an ink pen because you have seen an ink pen before, versus if I were to show you a spirometer. Do you know what that looks like? Can you identify it? It's going to be either take more time for you to identify it, or you're just not going to. So this also comes into play with words and things like that. So the higher frequency that we have seen something, the more quickly or likely we are to recognize that object. But this also pairs with priming, okay? That idea that we are setting the stage for something. If you have not read up on priming, go back to the previous chapters. There is a You Are Not So Smart on priming. Priming is going to be huge. That is going to be a huge asset for you as an educator. Go ahead and read up on priming. Come back here, or if you already read it, we'll just keep going. But the idea is if we prime, and it's a high frequency. So priming was one of those examples of carrot, tire, lake. Priming, high frequency, highest success rate. Priming and low frequency, next highest. So that's how important priming is. Then we go to unprimed and high frequency, next recognizable, and then the lowest one is unprimed, low frequency. Okay? So this is going to make it easier to recognize A, words in context, letters in context, and words versus non-words. So as we're reading, as we learn more vocabulary, as your students learn more vocabulary, their recognition and their speed at those tasks is going to increase. So there's another lab that you're going to jump to now in the supplement in class supplements called Word Superiority. Go through, do the lab, and then check out underneath it is where I shared my results. Come back here and we'll discuss a little bit more. Let's hit pause. Boom, pause. We're back. All right, so excellent job on that. How'd your results compare? Were they pretty comparable? I feel like they should be. It's a universal idea that's put into there. So next is the idea of well-formedness, right? So this is where we would have an easier time remembering words that would be high frequency for the majority of us in this class are English speaking. So it would be high frequency words in the English language versus words that do not follow the English conformed sequence, right? So typically it would be understood that we could have double letters in the middles, we could have Y's at the end of the word, but G and H together, things like that. But it would be uncommon if we have starting a word with BP, right? That's not a thing that is high frequency in the English language. Ending a word in, I don't know, double A, double I, right? That's not super common. Double U, right? Not a W, but a double U, right? So this is going to make things more difficult. What I'd like you to do now is jump in to the blackboard and open up spelling 1. You're going to go through spelling 1, spelling 2, spelling 3. So what you're going to do is you're going to give yourself, open it up. You get 15 seconds to remember those words. Then you're going to come out. You're going to hang out for 30 seconds. You're going to think about the day. You're going to stare outside. You're going to be wondering what those people are doing outside, things like that. 30 seconds, you're going to try and write down all the words that I remember. You're going to do it for each one of those spelling documents within Blackboard. When you come back, we're going to see how you did. So 15 seconds to remember, 30 seconds pause, write the word. Go on to the next one, 15, 30 words, 15, 30 words. Think about it for a second, like what, why, bet, and then come back here. So pause and go. All right, so what'd you find? If you are like the majority of people, number 1, spelling 1 would be the easiest for you. You'll have remembered the most words because they are words. That should be high frequency. The next one should have been your worst because those are not high frequency words, nor are they words, and most of them don't follow normal sequencing in the English language. And number 3 should have been somewhere in between, probably closer to the bottom, but should have been more successful than number 2 because those words actually followed normal sequencing in English. Okay, so all these things are going to lead to the classroom, right? So as an educator, identifying things, connecting things. So it's not just with object identification, but also word recognition, word frequency, reading, writing, all these components are going to come into play. So it's not just, I can see that that's a door, but how can we identify words? How do we understand how to move to the next word? Wordle, if you play Wordle, this is a play on that. So sometimes they're going to put in low frequency words with some components that do not follow basic English sequencing. That's going to trip you up. So to end this, what I want you to do is there is one last thing in the Blackboard. It's called Inferences in Reading. I forgot the name of it, but that's it. What I want you to do is open that up and on a quick glance, tell me how many F's are in it. How many F's are in that sentence? Go check it out now and then come right back here. Go check, come back. Go. You're back? Okay, so how many F's did you count? The majority of people will say 3. 3. There's 6 in it because what happens is there are 3 ofs, O-Fs within that. Typically, within our brain, we separate of as like a single item, right? Of. The F doesn't follow typical F sounds, phonetics, right? So we just sort of make it a thing. So our brain actually processes that differently. It just sort of jumps over it. So, a little tricky trick for you. That's it for today. You have your exam. You have your workbook. I think that's it for today. Yeah. All right. And I will see you in person next week.